Saturday. It'll help with some of the school scheduling. So the idea for these sessions, as you know, you've got today, another session Wednesday, a different kind of session with Dan Noon, who's also, I think I saw on the Zoom call here, who will be talking about where to find internships and so on. But I think the neat thing is this idea really came from the students in last year's class. Some of them, particularly those that were from outside the city, had not attended CUA in the past and weren't familiar with Washington, said, gee, we wish we could get a quicker and an earlier start on preparing for an internship. And couple that with all of a sudden we've got this Zoom thing going on, and we said, wow, we can do this. And so I think this is going to be a very effective tool for you and helping you prepare for that. And in the meantime, we're going to be talking to companies all summer long, as we have been, finding out what's going to be available and how to help you with that internship search. So I don't want to take a lot of time on the front end. I want to leave the time for Mary Kate. I'll be here at the back end, happy to answer any questions or have any discussions with you all for as long as you'd like. Would recommend, where you've got a good connection, to go ahead and turn your camera on so that other folks can kind of start to put names and faces together. Sometimes you don't have a good connection and it's best to come in audio only. That's fine too. So I want to introduce Mary Kate Conroy. Mary Kate was my very first hire to the MSB staff, and she's been working with the MSB students for, I guess, going on 8 years now. Her instincts about how to prepare for interviews, how to present yourself to employers, both on paper and in person, and her network with the local companies that we've been working with are just a really key part of the program. And simply put, if you play follow the leader with Mary Kate, you win. So Mary Kate, thank you for taking time to structure these sessions and start working with the group. I think this is just a great idea. So over to you, and I'll be back at the end.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen so you can all see. Bill, if you can enable my screen sharing, that would be awesome. But my name is Mary Kate Conroy. I'm the one you'll get emails from that has a kellyf@cua.edu, which has nothing to do with my name anymore. So I wanted to just throw that out there. That's me. I'm the Director of Career Development for the Bush School as a whole, but I'm the career coach for the MSB program. So you guys are my number ones, my go-tos. I will prioritize time for you. So I'm going to share my screen now for a presentation. Today, can you all see my screen? Thumbs up, great. Today I wanted to focus on two of the most important application materials that you have, and that's your resume and your cover letter. They really demonstrate who you are and how you're qualified for the positions. So today we're going to start with an overview of the resume template. I think Bill has sent it out to you. I'll also reshare it and pull it up here. Then we'll follow with a brief workshop on some of your bullet points so that you can get a little bit more intentional with them and make sure you're expressing your experiences in the right way that employers are looking for. I'll pause after that section for some questions. So if you do have questions throughout this, feel free to write them into the chat function, which should be at the bottom of your little video screens. It should say chat. If you click that, feel free to type in a question and I'll get to it during the question sections. We'll follow that with an overview of the cover letter template and about submitting your documents for applications, so you know exactly how to save your materials and what to send. And then we'll end with some more questions. So let's begin with the resume guidelines. I kind of want to walk you through this document at first, so you have an idea of exactly what to look for. If you don't already have your resume in front of you or with you, feel free to pull it up and grab it at the same time and kind of highlight sections as you check yourself for some of these things that I'm going to talk about today. So I'll give you guys a minute to do that. And in the meantime, I hope you can see this. We're going to begin at the top of your resume with your heading. Your headline is very important. It's the place where employers go when they want to contact you. So you want to make sure you have your up-to-date contact information available. This section, make sure it's not actually in the header section of your resume. You want to make sure it's still in the body of your resume. Some applicant tracking systems, for some reason, delete the header and the footer sections of your resume. So you just don't want that contact information to get lost. So make sure your header is actually in the body of the resume, not in the header section. It should include the city, state, and zip code in which you live, or in this case, where you're looking for work. I highly recommend putting Washington, D.C. with 20064 as your zip code if you're living near Catholic U. That is indicating to somebody when you're applying to an internship that you do not need relocation. You live in the area, or you will be living in the area at the time of that internship. Otherwise, you can list where you're actually living, or and go from there. The next part is your email. So you can use your CUA email, you can use your other college or university email, but I do recommend creating a separate Gmail account or Yahoo account, or just a separate email for job applications and networking. You will get a lot of emails on your school email from the university, and it will overwhelm your inbox, and it's really easy to lose things. So especially on the networking and job searching side, it would be great to have just one place to go. So I recommend just creating a free Gmail account with your name, your first and your last name at gmail.com. If you have to include a simple number after it, that's fine too. But I've seen that really help people stay organized as your internship and job searching. Your phone number is also very important, because recruiters will most likely want to call you at first instead of sending you an email at first. Then you want to move into your education section. Everybody should have the education listed first on their resume at this point, especially now that you're entering the MSB program. And that's to indicate to employers why you're seeking an internship. They can see that you're currently in an educational program. And then it won't be as confusing as to why maybe you're moving from a full-time job to a part-time or an internship. And it just gives them a better indication that during your time in the internship, you're going to be able to apply some business skills and some business knowledge that you're learning in the program. So education section first, and list the MSB program first. Everything on your resume should be in reverse chronological order. That means putting the most recent experience or most recent thing you've done first and working your way backwards. So you list it by listing the university name, the school, the Master of Science in Business, the date you're graduating. Some people like to put anticipated May 2021, but by saying May 2021, they know that hasn't happened yet, so you're pretty much covering your bases. The capstone project that you will start in the spring could go here as well under education. So don't put this right away because you haven't done it yet, but keep in the back of your mind that when you gain that experience, you can add it to the very top part of your resume to kind of showcase the consulting work that you'll be doing. You can indicate your GPA. It's not necessary. It's not highly looked at from a graduate program, but some companies do require it as minimum qualifications. So if they do, then just make sure you do include it on your resume. And same goes for your undergraduate degree in school. This section, I would recommend if you had a 3.4 GPA or above, include it no matter what. But if you haven't, only include it if the company is asking for it. You can also include relevant coursework. You're welcome to include relevant coursework up under MSB as well, but I would just mind your space and make sure it's actually relevant. You don't need to list every single course you've taken from your undergraduate and your graduate. Focus on what's relevant to the job that you're applying to. Honors and awards, athletics, that's where it can go under your education section as well. So I want to move into this optional section called academic projects. It's a place where you could pull out your capstone experience and explain it in some more detail, or maybe you've had another academic project that's relevant to something that you're interested in or applying to. So I see this section helpful with candidates who are seeking research-based opportunities, or roles that are just really relevant to the project that you were doing. So if you, for example, I have on the comments over here, if you were major in marketing and you did a strategy project and you're looking for a marketing job, then you might want to highlight that strategy project separate from your education experience. Otherwise, this is optional and not a necessary section. We want to get to professional experience. I'll take some time after this to do that bullet workshop with you, but in the meantime, remember to list things reverse chronologically. Make sure to include the company name and the city and state that the company is located in. So if you want to go through your resume right now and just highlight or circle some of the sections that are going to need you to go back and look at it again to add these things, you can do that. When you're describing or writing out the timeline in which you worked there, it's important to list it as the month and the year instead of just the numbers, 1/20. It's a little more difficult to read, and also avoid abbreviations with that. So you want to write out January 2020 -present if you started something in January. This also, instead of indicating summer 2020, I know a lot of, when you're writing something that you've done during school, we think in semesters. So you think fall or spring or summer. From a professional standpoint, they think in terms of months and calendar years. So just, it reflects that you're a professional by writing it that way. If you're currently working there, you want to indicate -present is how you do that. If you've ended your experience, then you just include the month and the year in which you've ended that experience. If you've been in multiple positions, there's a couple different ways you can list it, and I don't have an example right here, but you could put the position titles listed next to each other for different positions along with the entire time that you were present there, or you can list the month and the year in terms of like the different sections. So if you worked there from January to April every year, but not the rest of the year, you can put January-April, 2020, 2021, however, whatever those years are. So you would indicate the months. I'll write it out here. So it'd be month, month, -year, year. Hope that makes sense. To list the different years and months in which you worked. Yeah. So we're going to do the workshop on the bullets this is a reminder on the template to begin every bullet point with a strong action verb. I'll talk about that in a minute. But I do want to move down to the rest of the format before I do. The volunteer and leadership experience and activity section, it's kind of a catch-all section. It's optional, and I would like you to title it to what makes most sense based on your experience. So if it's a list of volunteer experiences, just call that section volunteer experience. If it's a list of some leadership experiences you want to highlight a bit more from your educational background, just title it leadership experience or activities. But you format this section the same way you format the professional experience section. If there's a list of these things that don't really warrant bullet points, remember you have the space up here in education to indicate that here. Finally, you want to end your resume with a certifications or skills section. So not all of you have certifications, so don't call the section certifications if you don't have any, but all of you have skills of some sort. And this section is highlighting the language and the technical skills that you may have. So if you have language skills, this is where you put it, and you want to tell me if you're a native speaker or if you're fluent or if you're just conversational in that language. Giving me that degree in which you know the language is really helpful for the employer. And then you also want to mention the technical experience that you have. So all of you will probably have the basics of Microsoft Excel, Word, PowerPoint on here, but some of you may have had some other programs that you were introduced to through other internships and other experiences. So this is where you would list them out here. This is a section that employers go to frequently when they have specific programs they want their employees to know or the candidates to know. So you just want to make sure that's reflected in this section if you do know it. So that was a quick overview. And then this is a quick summary slide of just some of the do's, high-level do's and high-level don'ts for your resume. So this is your checklist right now if you're looking at your resume. You want to make sure you're utilizing the month and the year for the dates with no abbreviations. You want to make sure your margins are no less than 0.5 and no more than 1 inch. I tend to see as you add some more things to the program that the 0.5 inch becomes a standard. So if you want to go there now and see how much more space you get with it, it's very professional. You can definitely use the 0.5 all the way around. Your fonts should be no less than 10, no more than 12. The sweet spot is 11-point font, so try to go no less than that, but if you absolutely have to, you can go to a 10-point font. Times New Roman or Arial is pretty standard in the business industry. I recommend Times New Roman. It gives you some more space. I find Arial takes up a little bit more room. So Times New Roman, I think, would be a good go-to font. You want to check your resume for consistency and punctuation. This demonstrates to an employer that you're detail-oriented, that you can double-check your work. It's something as simple as having the period at the end of every bullet or not having the period at the end of every bullet goes a long way for some recruiters. So just make sure whatever you choose to do is just consistent throughout your entire document. This is getting pretty picky, but hyphens, make sure those are the same length and there's the same spacing between words with hyphens. It's one way to show another detailed perspective. And then your bullet points should have strong action verbs and should be results oriented with a reverse chronological order of the descriptions. Not particularly reverse chronological order of the actual bullets, but more so the experiences as a whole. From the don'ts perspective, you do not need an objectives or summary statement as of right now. I would say maybe 5 years out from now, if you have a 2-page resume, you could include a summary of your accomplishments section at the top. Otherwise, your 1-page resume is a summary of your experiences and you are tailoring that information. So no need for a summary statement or an objective statement. Avoid abbreviations. Avoid acronyms as much as possible. I will say there's an exception to this. If there's an acronym you're using over and over and over and it's really long, taking up a lot of unneeded space or unnecessary space, then indicate what that is with the acronym in parentheses next to it, and then you can refer to it by the acronym the rest of the document, but strive not to. Line dividers. This is something I didn't mention when I was looking at the template, but you could, at the top under the header, there was a line across the page. That line, I would make sure on your resume that it's not an image of a line and it's just the underline function on your computer. That's because some tracking systems still today, even through if you're submitting a PDF, sometimes mess with format and that image of a line can get shifted to a spot that you didn't intend it to be. So if you're really tied to those lines across the page and for organization, make sure you just do it with an underline instead of with the image of a line. Avoid pronouns. When you're listing your experiences in your bullet points, you want to avoid the I, the me, the we. You want to keep it as objective as possible. So if you have any of that, it would be a good time to kind of circle those and just make sure you eliminate them. Most of the time you won't need to change much in how you're wording it, except for eliminating me. Helped me with this project, just helped with the project. Use your tenses correctly. This says don't use them incorrectly. That means if the experience is in the past, use past tense. Led, you led a project. If it's in the present tense, you lead a project, not leading. So something to think about as you're writing the bullets is think of you saying like, I lead. I currently lead this project without saying I currently. And that's how you begin the present tense for the bullets. Your resume should be 1 page and you should save your resume as a PDF, but don't save it as a PDF with that extra blank page at the bottom because you were able to get it to a page, but you forgot to delete the blank page at the end. So it's just a reminder to to double check that. Are we ready to craft a better bullet? I'm going to share with you a simple formula, for lack of a better word, to better write your experiences and highlight the transferable skills and the transferable nature of the work that you've done. So we want to begin by identifying your skill, right? I talked about starting with a strong action verb. This resource I'm going to pull up here, I will share with you in the chat during the questions, is a list of action verbs or skills that you can use in your resume and any other professional profiles. I really like this list because it categorizes your skills in categories. So management leadership skills, if that's something you want to make sure you're highlighting about yourself, what are some of the skilled action verbs that you can use to begin your bullet points? It goes all the way through from research skills to teaching skills, technical skills, organization skills. I would bet that all of you, maybe not all of you, but 95 to 99% of you probably have a bullet that starts with the word organized. So this will give you a little bit of another perspective on how you can explain that experience. So maybe one of the bullets you mentioned, you definitely want to say organized, like to demonstrate you have that skill. But other bullets might actually warrant something a little bit more descriptive than organized. Maybe you want to use the word categorized or corresponded with or reviewed something as part of demonstrating your organization skills. So I will make sure you guys have this because I find it very helpful as you're thinking of better ways to explain the experiences you have. It might jolt some, creativity on your end. In going through that list, you're going to want to avoid any weak verbs. So again, look at your resume now, circle those words. If you have any bullets that start with assisted in or helped or worked or responsible for, circle them so that you can go change them to a stronger action verb from the list I'm going to send you. Of course you assisted in something. Of course you helped. Of course you worked. That's what your resume is all about. So tell me exactly what you worked in or you helped in. A lot of times if you have your bullet starting with that, it's usually the word right after that that you could use as your strong action verb. So with helped, it's like helped manage this project. We'll just say managed the project in a team of how many people. And it shows that you were helping without having to say help. And it focuses on your management experience as opposed to your helping experience, or your skill, your management skill as opposed to your helping skill. Okay, so you have your skill, which is literally just the action verb. And then your next immediate part to your bullet point is to identify the task. And that addresses the what. It's descriptive, it's short and sweet. And these two areas of your bullet points are actually very common. Most candidates include these two things in your bullet points. So it would look something like you want to showcase the skill designed. So you designed what? You designed a marketing plan. Notice I didn't just say a plan, right? I'd use some sort of descriptive word for it, a marketing plan. It's short and sweet, but it gives me context. It gives me enough to know exactly what you were working on or what exactly you designed. Another one would be led a team of 3 in event planning. So you led the team in what? Event planning. So that's, just remember, those are the basic parts of your bullet points and you're not quite done yet. So if you already have skill and task, that's great. Most do. The next point I would love for you to include and that hiring managers are just dying for are how. How did you exhibit that skill and do that task? So that comes with thinking about using what, by what. So you designed a marketing plan, how? By using SWOT analysis, right? By coordinating with a team of something, whatever. You led a team of 3 in event planning, how? By showing excellent communication skills or coordinating with various departments. That how section gives you an opportunity to showcase some more keywords that are relevant to that industry, and it just provides more descriptions on what you can offer when you go work somewhere else. And the last piece that is often forgotten in many bullet points, but is so necessary if you're looking to differentiate yourself among other candidates and other resumes, is the result. This addresses the why, right? So what was the purpose of doing what you did and doing it the way you did it? How did you affect change, maybe? How did you increase something? What was the bigger picture impact of what you were working on? I talked to many students who haven't had experiences such as filing or, organizing papers or sending emails. I would love to challenge each of you as you go through your bullet points on your own to ask yourself, how did that task affect the bigger picture of this organization? How did I contribute to something more than just that task? How did filing, for example, actually improve something for my team, for my clients, for the organization's clients, for the board? Go as big as you want, right? And I think that will help you identify that there is a bigger picture result for even the smallest of tasks that you're describing in your bullet points. So I want to share with you some examples that hopefully will spark some creativity as you think of your own. We'll start first with designed marketing plan. That's the skill and the task in a team of 3 using SWOT analysis. That's the tools, that's the how, to increase client engagement in new target markets. I didn't say here that I definitely increased client engagement or anything. Maybe I don't know if I actually impacted that or not. But maybe I do, and maybe that's what I want to highlight more quantifiably. But otherwise, I know that the plan in my skill and what I was doing was to increase client engagement, and that's a big picture result. Here we have communicated as your skill that you want to share. What did you communicate? The store offerings with customers. How did you communicate that? Daily, in a professional manner. And what was the result of that communication? Your result was to improve customer loyalty, right? Or ensure customer loyalty, increase, to grow, whatever the word is, that was the impact. Here are some other ones to think about. Oops, there we go. Collaborated daily with operations team by phone and email to improve efficiencies in food delivery. Right? You're telling me your communication experience along with your ability to work with other people, how you affected the big picture efficiency of the organization. Maybe you manage schedules and project tasks for a team of 5 using Trello, and you successfully executed 6 events yearly because of that. So that's another way to write a bullet point. I have a couple more examples here, and something, not every bullet can fit this exact formula sometimes. So I think it's okay to kind of switch around the order, not so much the skill part, but I'll show you an example here in a second. Let's start with organized 2 major conferences in a team of 7, including the 2017 Global Conference, which attracted 2,000 participants. So here you're giving me the skill of organization. You're quantifying how many of these conferences you had to do, how many people you worked with. Maybe it was necessary for you to mention that it was a global conference because maybe you'll go and work in some sort of global capacity. And then you're giving me the results of that. The conference attracted 2,000 participants, and it's directly linked to the type of organization that you did for that organization. You led a team of 4 in a market strat simulation, and using an improved marketing strategy, you increased revenues by this much. If you can quantify that, that's great. Many of you cannot right now, and that's fine. I would say keep that in mind when you're going in your internships about the work that you're doing and how you can quantify the results. It's a lot easier to think in the moment about that than kind of backtracking for past experiences. Here's an example. The last 2 bullets here are actually the same bullet, just written in 2 different ways to show you that you can kind of focus on what is most important to the employer in the way you're writing your bullet. The first is actually beginning with the results, which we haven't seen yet, right? So I have increased participation in 3 events by 15% in 6 months by creating 2 new programs and focusing on customer segmentation. So you can see the skill and the task here. There's two pretty much, and the tool kind of overlaps with it. It's a bit more hidden in here, and I'm highlighting that I've increased participation before. I would say this is appropriate when a employer's job description says right at the top, like, you're coming in to increase participation, or you're coming in to do X, and it's much a result instead of the how you got there. Sometimes beginning with the result in the bullet is the best way to describe that. Here's another way to write it where you continue to have the skill first. So you created 2 new programs and focused on customer segmentation, which increased participation for 3 events by 15% in 6 months. So this is the normal way of what we've been talking about. But this focus is giving me that you can create programs, you can focus on customer segmentation, and maybe that's what the job description is really asking for right off the bat. Okay. Before I get to questions, I wanted to send you guys this link to jobscan.co. It's a great tool to help you optimize your resume with some keywords. We will definitely talk about keywords and tailoring your resume during the fall, so don't worry about it too much for your internship searches. But if you're curious and you're looking to just see if your resume is following the right patterns for employers and what they're seeking, here, I'll pull it up quick. It's a great site. So they claim it helps boost your interview chances. I think it does as well, especially if you're submitting something to a tracking system. But if you scroll down here, yeah, they say 90% of large companies use tracking systems, which is true. You can paste your resume here as well as the job description. And when you scan it, it will give you a clear indication of where you're overlapping with that job description and where you aren't, so that you can go back in your resume and say, but I actually do have that experience. I'm just not explaining it in the right way, I guess, that the tracking system would pick up its meaning meeting the job description. So I think this is just an insightful way to see what keywords are being pulled up in the job description and if your resume is reflecting those in the right way. I will pause here for resume questions. And let me see if I can get to the chat if anybody sent anything. Bill, actually, because I'm sharing my screen, do you mind asking the questions if there were any listed in the chat? Is Bill still here?
I am. I don't think there are any questions in the chat.
No questions. Okay, you guys sure? Does anyone?
I do have a question. I did not put it in the chat. My name is Victoria Schmutzer. I don't have the best connection, so my video isn't going to be on, but hopefully my mic's working. The month, year that you were talking about,
Yeah.
Can you re-explain that, please?
Sure. So let me pull up the actual thing. Can you see the template?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So here, I'll actually write it out here. So you have a position title. Your example is that you have, say you worked somewhere from January to August every year, but it was only for those months. Or you know what, let's do May to August, right? It's most likely summer. May to August, and I've done it for how many years? Let's say from 2017 to 2020. That's how you would list it. Or 2017, 2019, 2020. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Welcome. And if it's a grouped year, you can just put the dash.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for going over that.
Yeah, I knew when I started, I was like, that's probably confusing the way I worded that. Thank you for asking. Anybody else have a question? Feel free to jump in just like Victoria did.
Yes, you said not to abbreviate anything in the resume, but what about like states like PA, Maryland?
I'm glad you brought that up. That's fine. If you can write it out and you have the space, write it out, as long as it's consistent. So if you write it out on one experience, make sure you write it out on the rest. If you abbreviated one experience,
sure,
abbreviate it in the rest. Good question. Anyone else? How about I'll chat you the resources at the end just so you have them all. And I think, Bill, if we can send a follow-up email too, we can include.
Yeah, we'll include the recording for tomorrow, and we could send any additional resources too.
Great. Are we ready to move on to cover letters? Awesome. If you think of anything else, put it in the chat. We'll get to it at the end. Oh, someone raised their hand. I don't know who that was. Go for it. You snuck it in.
Was that me? I think it was me. I was wondering if there's like a time limit, like a time cutoff, like 10 years or something for a job experience that you wouldn't put on your resume.
Great question. So you want to eliminate high school. You do not need to include your high school. I would say for those of you that went to maybe really prominent high schools and you're sending your resume to somebody who also went there and you know that, maybe include it. Maybe, right? I mean, that's just a really wide exception there. Otherwise, just include your college. So I wouldn't go past, I think 7 years is actually a good indicator, but it's mostly about relevance. So if you have something that's at the 7 or 8 year mark that's very, very relevant to your story and why you're applying somewhere, we may be able to put it in. But I would say 7 years is probably a good maximum cutoff. Most of you will not go that far back. That's a maximum. So I would just include your experiences from college. Okay, any other questions? Just post them in the chat and I'll get to them at the end. Awesome. Let's move to cover letters. Our favorite topic, my favorite topic, not really, but cover letters are actually often overlooked by employers and by candidates. And the reason is because only 50% of hiring managers are actually reading cover letters. So while that's the case, not sending a cover letter is actually a huge sign of laziness to an employer. It's similar to making any sort of spelling or grammar mistakes. It's just something you don't want to do. So even if only 1 in 2 cover letters are getting read, that actually means there's still a 50% chance that including one is actually going to help you. So it's really an opportunity to distinguish yourself. And I just want to make sure you guys are doing that in the best way possible. So we're going to briefly go over what hiring managers are looking for in your cover letter and the purpose. So the purpose is to introduce yourself to an organization. It's to demonstrate your interest in the company or specific vacancy. It's to draw attention to your resume, and it's to motivate the reader to interview you. This cover letters are not make or break going to get you a job all the time, but they will help you get that interview. So what are employers looking for? I want to give you just these 5 ways to kind of ensure that you're meeting the employer's expectations when it comes to your cover letter. And the first way is to do your research. Without that, your cover letter is almost meaningless. If you don't know anything about the company or anything about the employees and what they're doing there, writing your cover letter is going to come off very generic and be overlooked most of the time. So do your research. Talk to the people who work there. You can search the website. You can review LinkedIn backgrounds of people who work there as well. But this is very key to having you tailor this cover letter to the organization. The second is to open strongly. So this, I will share as an example with you in a minute, but having a clear, strong introduction really entices the reader to read more. So the hiring manager, you want them to read more. The third is to emphasize your personal value. And this is very important because as much as this document is about you, you want to make sure that you highlight how your experience, your interests, your education, how those are valuable to the employer. So you can do this by sharing an accomplishment that shows to the hiring manager that you can address the challenges that they're facing in their organization. And I'll give you an example in a minute about that as well. The fourth is to convey enthusiasm. So this is, sincere, authentic enthusiasm in written word goes a really long way with somebody wanting to give you a call and hear that enthusiasm on the phone. So just keep that in mind to showcase why you're so interested in this place that you're applying is really important. And then the fifth is to keep it short. Cover letters should be no more than 1 page, no more than 5 paragraphs. Most cover letters are from 3 paragraphs to 4 paragraphs. So keeping it short, concise, but demonstrating these other things is very, very important. So let's first go to the actual letter template. This is how it will be formatted, or how I recommend formatting it based on hiring manager feedback. And it also gives you the formality while providing you space to be distinctive. At the top, you want to include your header that you have on your resume. So that's your name, the city, state, zip, your email address, your phone number. Feel free to include your LinkedIn profile URL. I didn't mention that on the resume, but that's something we'll talk about in the fall. And then on the left-hand side, this is the formality piece of the letter, is including the date that you're writing it. This is kind of a tradition with cover letters. When they used to be handwritten, you would need to actually address the letter to be mailed in. But doing this now actually shows that little extra care and attention to the employer, that you know who you're applying to. This is a letter specifically for them and not just generic for every place that you're applying. Then you want to get to your header. This is actually very important. You should try to all of your best of your ability to get the name of the hiring manager in which you're applying. I say that because a lot of candidates, and you will be one of them at some point, I know I was one of them, got lazy and just put "Dear hiring manager" or "to whom it may concern." Many people do that, right? But you aren't just the many anymore. You want to stand out, right? We want your cover letter to get read if you're spending all this time reading it. So addressing it to somebody specific is very important. And that's how you do it. The opening paragraph here should include that really strong introduction, like I said before, and it should indicate why this job is exciting to you. So on the comments over here, I have an example. If you guys can see this okay. I say people will typically write, "I'm applying for X job that I saw in Y place," right? And this is a quote from this article I got from Harvard Business Review, but they say that that's a waste of text for an intro. You want to start with some sort of punchline about why the job is exciting to you and why you are right for it. So for example, you could say, "I'm a Master of Science in Business candidate with a passion for nonprofit work related to racial injustice, and I'd love to bring my experience in business and psychology to your growing communications team." Now, starting like that instead of just saying, "I'm applying because I found this job on Handshake," you can see how already you're engaging in the why factor, which is really important. So something to keep in mind as you're looking for a punchy intro is to not try to be funny. Sometimes humor can fall flat, and I wanted to write this here because I do find, as we're trying to show our personalities through our cover letters a bit more, I'm one of them. I would want to go the humor route as much as I can. But first, for a cover letter, you do not need to try to be funny. You want to show more of the sincere, authentic reasons, again, as to why you're interested in them, as opposed to trying to make a joke that makes you feel good about yourself. So that's the introduction. I have descriptions here that you could read on your own for exactly what to include in each of these paragraphs and the purpose of this letter, how to keep it concise, how to match the job description. Remember that this document, as much as it's about you, is also about how you relate to the company and why you're interested in them, not why they should be interested in you 100% of the time in this letter. There's a space for that, but it's not the domineering factor of the letter. You want to end your letter with thanking them for their time and consideration, a way to contact you, a way that you will be contacting them in a certain time frame. This goes a really long way with employers. So if you say, you can say to them that I will be reaching out in the next 10 days to follow up on my application. and arrange an appointment to discuss my qualifications. That shows proactivity. It might seem bold to some of you, but it's reflected really positively from the employer's perspective. You want to end with sincerely and your signed signature as much as you can get your actual signed signature. I know that you can save this as like an image on your computer if you've written it out. Copy and paste it here or print it out, sign it, scan it back in, whatever works best for you. And also include your type signature at the end. I've included some high-level top 3 tips here, just so you can keep that in mind. If you cannot find, for some reason, the name of the person to address this letter to, and you've tried your hardest, then you can address it as Dear Hiring Manager. Or I think then the other suggestion here is Dear Search Committee. Dear Hiring Manager is pretty standard. So as an overview of what to remember for your cover letter, you want to use some concrete examples to demonstrate skills that are relevant to the position, right? So you don't need to repeat exactly what's on your resume. They have your resume, they're reading it, they know. They want to see a bit more of the story behind it or a bit more detail on the experience that you weren't able to really fit in your resume. So this is illustrating specifically how you think your experience can contribute to the organization. You don't want it to be more than 1 page, so it consists of an intro, a body, and conclusion, just like any other letter. You want to make sure it's customized. So these are the 3 points or questions to keep in mind. So why are you interested in the organization? Why should they be interested in you? And when and how you will contact them to follow up and schedule an appointment. So just keep those 3 things in mind to make it very customized to the company. And then you want to address the letter to a specific individual, as I mentioned before. Okay. So what if the job application does not ask for a cover letter? Because there are many out there that don't, and a lot of us will be like, sweet, awesome, don't have to write it. But let me tell you a little story of somebody, a true story about someone named Heidi, not her real name. Heidi was interested in working with the Boys and Girls Village. It's a nonprofit in Connecticut. There was a recent job posting for a recruiting and training specialist. So the hiring manager is looking for someone with strong recruiting background who can hit the ground running because they are a small team and can't afford to train somebody. So more than 100 candidates applied for the job. The organization's online applicant tracking system doesn't allow for cover letter attachments. So what did Heidi do? Heidi instead sent a follow-up email after submitting her resume. Heidi's resume really made her look like she was a job hopper. It was very short stints at each of the previous employers. The hiring manager assumed she was a poor performer who just kept getting fired. She was also the only candidate who didn't have a degree specific to the industry that she'd be recruiting for. But Heidi's email caught the hiring manager's eye. First off, it was professional. She stated clearly that she was writing to double check that her application had been received. She went on to explain how she'd gotten the hiring manager's name and information. It was through her friend's boss, who sits on the board of the organization, and her personal connection to the Boys and Girls Village, which her neighbor has done some work with the organization before, so she mentioned she had that connection. What really stood out to the hiring manager was that Heidi understood the group that she would be entering into and the challenges that that group was facing. So she did her research. She listed some things that she would do or already had done that would help the team address the needs. So the personality and the passion that Heidi also conveyed through her email was solidified when she was in her phone screen for the position as well. And the hiring manager ended up offering her the job and she was accepted. And the hiring manager said that her application would have been overlooked if she did not send that emailed version of the cover letter. So I share this story just to demonstrate one example out of many candidates who do go out of their way to make that personal touch with somebody. And the cover letter structure and what it includes is a great way to make that connection. So I highly recommend sending a cover letter regardless of it being included. And you send that through an email. And it looks a little bit different because you're not attaching that formal letter perspective. So I'll share here just the quick things to include in that email. So as you submit your application materials, the resume and the cover letter, you want to save and submit them as PDFs. It reduces the chance of your format being all jumbled up in the tracking systems and also in somebody's email if they don't have that program, the same program you do. You want to format each of the files that you're saving by writing your last name, your first name, and the type of document that it is. So last name, first name, resume.pdf, or last name, first name, cover letter. If you are submitting your resume and cover letter by email, you want to make sure your subject line is short and to the point and includes your name and the position that you're applying to. So something as simple as your first name, last name, application for X position. In the email, you want to include some of the details that were similar to the cover letter. So that's the Dear So-and-so heading. That's identifying the job position that you're applying to, naming the source in which you found that description, whether it's a person or the platform, why you're the ideal candidate. And that's this condensed version of the 2 to 3 paragraph cover letter core. You want to probably put into one paragraph in an email that just identifies why you're an ideal candidate and why you're interested. You'll end with a closing statement, just as you do on the cover letter, as well as an email signature. That email signature should be followed or include your contact details. So that's always your phone number, your email address, your LinkedIn URL, hopefully as we get into the fall and you feel confident with it. And that all goes right underneath your signature in your email. Whew. So I just threw a lot at you, and I want to make sure I get to any questions you have before we wrap up the hour. So feel free to chat them in or just speak up in the video as well. I'm going to quickly ask my husband for my charger. My computer is dying much quicker than I expected. But feel free to chat them in or raise your hand. And Bill, if you can do the honors of just calling on the person who has a question.
You got it.
That'd be great. Thank you. Let me grab him for a second. Hey, Mike. It's okay. I think we'll be okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes. This is Lionel.
Hi, Lionel.
And my question is just, I know cover letters are they supposed to be generic, meaning like a resume where you can use the same resume to send to different companies? So, and I know you mentioned about adding the hiring manager to the cover letter. So do we just write a cover, like a generic cover letter, or we have to write a specific cover letter for the company?
Great question. Great question. I would say it's a specific cover letter for every company. You may have some repeated stories or descriptions or experiences, but every letter is unique to the company. It's really easy for them to tell whether it's just a generic copied and pasted for multiple companies. If you're applying to very similar positions, you won't have much to change. But if you're kind of trying out different industries, make sure the information's tailored. Same with your resume, actually, too. I know you said resumes are usually generic. I will challenge you during the fall to see how we can tailor or customize that resume for the industry or the company that you're most interested in. So tailoring is key.
Sweet, thank you.
Yeah,
Mary Kate, question from Evan. Are you going to send out the templates for the resume? I think they have been sent out, but we can make sure we send them out in tomorrow's update.
Yes, let's do that. We'll send it again in tomorrow's update with the recording for this. You'll have everything in one spot because I know the chat kind of disappears some of the resources. So we'll just make sure you have it in your email.
Tori, you have your hand up? Or Victoria?
Yes. Tori or Victoria, either one. So the first question, he asked if your cover letters could be generic, which you said they need to be tailored specifically for the job. if you are going like and looking at different fields, would you recommend also tailoring our resume to show more managerial, more organizational skills, depending on what it's asking for?
Yes. And I would say for your internship search, you might not have to do this as much as when you start moving to the full-time job search. But if you want to practice it now with the internship search, oh my gosh, what a mouthful. I would definitely try to, and the way you tailor, we can talk about this further in the next session too with LinkedIn, but the way you further tailor is prioritizing what the company has prioritized on their job descriptions. So just like you said, if they're looking for somebody with management experience, make sure the experience where you have management experience indicates your management ability as your first bullet point, so that they know right away, okay, she has management experience, check. You want to make it as easy as possible for the company to find how you're qualified or connected to the job. And that's where tailoring comes in.
Thank you very much.
Quick question, piggybacking off of her question there. For the cover letter, for those of us who are kind of switching gears and looking more in terms of business stuff, even though that wasn't our undergrad or necessarily our undergrad internship experiences, do you recommend including that in the cover letter, or is it just a waste of space and no one cares? Just get to the point of why you're here now.
Well, is that part of why you're here now, right? And I think thinking about your stories comprehensively is really important. I don't think any of the experiences you each have prior to entering business, if it's not business related, they don't go unnoticed or unwanted in business. So I would use your story to your advantage. You're unique, right? You're combining a liberal arts or STEM degree with a business degree, and very few people are doing that. So that's actually a really great story. I think it would be worth mentioning in a cover letter kind of how you got to this point of, briefly, how you got to this point of wanting to apply to this company. Yeah, good question.
Alex, you have a question?
Yes, I came across an application that asks to upload a file of contact references. Now, I've done applications where it has like an outline of itself to put in for it, but how would you go about creating your own file for that?
Yes, so your reference sheet, if you notice on the resume template, it doesn't say like references right after that, because you want to be in control of when you send your references out or not. So if it is asked for, it's just another Google Doc sheet. I can send you a guideline for that as well if it would be helpful, but you mostly include the name of the person that you used to work for, or a colleague or coworker. Sometimes the companies will specify the kind of reference they're looking for, if they're looking for a previous boss. So just make sure you include those in that list. If you have like 3 to 5 people that you can put on that list, that's usually a good indication of your references. Have that document ready to go. Reach out to your references prior to sending their contact information to the company so that they have a heads up that they may be contacted. And you can let them know why you're interested and some other things about what you're doing now that might help them speak to it when they are contacted. So that is a separate sheet. It doesn't need to be as formal, but just make sure you have the name, the contact information, the company where they work, and that should be fine.
All right, thank you.
Good question.
Any-
And yeah, I'm up on the time. It's 5:03. Does anyone else have any questions?
I have a brief question. Sorry, I couldn't get my unmute button to work. But just so you said like some things are like more specific to like to applying for the full-time positions, whereas like some things are better like maybe just sending out a general resume for internship positions. Do you personally find it better if students wait until they start the program, or at least start the orientation week before they start applying for internships? Would you prefer they start applying tomorrow in July? what do you think is the best method to go about that?
The best method is to apply early and often. I would say start looking prior to the program, but if you're accepted and you've made your deposit in the program, you can say to any employer that you're starting this program in the fall, and that's when you're looking to start an internship. July is going to be a really good month for companies to post internship opportunities for August, September, and October, and it will continue to come in on a rolling basis. So if you can get your application materials completed this month in June, ready to go for after the 4th of July, I think you'll find some opportunities are available that you would be actually qualified for in business, despite what you may think with your background. So that's where I challenge you with the bullet points to think about the transferable skills like your research ability. That's actually very needed in business and in a lot of internships in business. So I wouldn't swipe that under the rug or anything, highlight that. I'm not particularly familiar with your background right now, but we can talk one-on-one as well if you're looking to tailor. But if you are sending something general, this is where a cover letter or an email indicating that little story of why you're interested in that job now, whether your resume reflects it or not, is going to be really important. So I think July is a good month to start exploring and sending applications. This is why we're doing these sessions now in June, to help prep you to be able to do that July and August.
Awesome, thank you. And then, yeah, we do have a meeting scheduled for later this week. So
Great.
we'll go over that further. Thank you.
Then. Okay.
Any other general program questions that Professor Mackay and I could answer for anyone?
Yeah, Bill, while folks are thinking of that, I was very impressed with the questions you had for Mary Kate. And I think in addition to the tools and resources that she makes available to you, hopefully you now understand looking for a job or an internship is not just throwing Jell-O at the wall and seeing what sticks. It's a very strategic process, very detail-oriented. You have to be very attentive to the details. I've had students send cover letters and spelled the hiring manager or the owner of the company, their name wrong. Obviously that goes right in the circular file. So it's a process, but if you continue to follow along, which is why we have a course in this in the fall and spring with Mary Kate, if you continue to do the things that she helps you to learn, you're going to be successful at this. And we've got 10 years of real live experience with that. So Mary Kate, thank you. That was a great start, and hopefully everyone is excited to get going on their searches. But any questions about the program in general, what the school's doing to prepare, anything at all that we can address for you? Chris?
Yeah, I was wondering if there are any stipulations or requirements for internships to be applied for it to actually count.
Oh, yeah, really good question. And Dan will probably start addressing some of that on the session Wednesday. We're pretty liberal in our definition of an internship. We want you to, for those of you that haven't had a chance to have an internship in college or something, experience what business is like. We'd like you to see something in an area that interests you, but you may not know what that is. So try something. As long as it's something you can hone your time management skills, you'll start to see the things that you're learning in your classes, or as we call them, business meetings, actually used in a business setting. So we're very liberal in our definition of what an internship is. We don't want you filing papers and things like that. We want you getting real experience, and so if you're not sure, just get hold of Mary Kate or myself, and we're happy to talk through those things. What else?
I have a question.
Sure.
is I was talking to an alum who went to my undergrad, so like I was asking her like if we're required to be in an internship both semesters, 1 semester, 2 semesters. I mean, I'm personally planning on being in an internship the whole year because I think that might be what's best. But I was just like curious like how the program works in that sense.
Valeria, you mean should you have an internship both semesters or?
Yes, yeah. Like is it part of like the course requirement to be an internship both semesters?
It's something that we want you to do. It's highly recommended. It's not an internship for credit. In Washington, I believe you can't both be paid and earn credit, and we'd rather you be paid. But it's to your benefit. And most students do have internships. Probably, I don't know, Mary Kate, you would know maybe half or a little more would keep the same internship for both
Yeah,
semesters?
it's about half. That's correct. So I would say half the class last year kept the same internship both semesters, and half of them decided to switch it up and try to get something else for the spring, just to try a different experience. Or the internship was only a semester-long internship anyway. So either way is fine. Totally up to you. I've also seen people combine multiple experiences to kind of fill that 15 to 20 hours of work or internship. I know Dan will talk about this a little bit more on Wednesday, so make sure to check in with that for job search strategy. But you could work on a smaller project that maybe is for a small business, 10 hours a week, and work another project for a different business, another 10 hours a week, and that can count as your internship experience. So we're like Stu said, we're very flexible, and we'll definitely be able to talk about that more on Wednesday too.
What we don't want you to do is get worried about any hard deadlines or anything, particularly for those of you coming from outside the city. You don't want to come to a new city, find a place to live, enroll in a new program, and start a new job all in the same week. So, relax about that. If you can get the internship ahead of time, the best thing is if you can find an internship, move to DC, get started working, sort of get comfortable in that environment before you start the program. But don't feel like you're under pressure. I have to have an internship this week. We're not worried about that.
Yeah, I think most of you know that I did the program, graduated back in 2014. I didn't have my internship until the start of October. So I think I started either September 29th or October 1st. So I was panicked the entire month of September. But I realized that a few of my fellow classmates were in the same position. And you'll see that as you're coming into the program, you don't need to have an internship for the start of orientation. We want it to be a relevant work experience for you that adds some good experience to your resume that helps you further that career path that you want after graduation.
Actually, on that point there, is orientation scheduled around possibly the same way that classes are, insofar as we could work the mornings and then come to orientation in the afternoons, or is it more kind of all day?
Mark, orientation will be all day.
Okay.
We'll have you pretty much scheduled, I think, from 9 until 6 or 7, depending upon the day. But as soon as you have the schedule ready for that, we'll release it to you. So it's
that's awesome.
It's not going to be a surprise for what's going on in orientation.
Okay, I was more concerned like, okay, well, if I was thinking about trying to start something on August 1st and then have to take a week off later, it might as well just be worth it to start after orientation.
Mark, you bring up a really good point, and we want to help you with this. I mean, if you could start a job in August and let your supervisor know that you have certain academic requirements. And I don't recall running into an internship where they objected to that. The key is communication and transparency.
Awesome.
Always communicating with your supervisor. So we're going to give you a lot of details on your schedule. There may be some Fridays that we're going to want to visit some companies locally. Um, and what students find is if you tell your supervisor a week, 2 weeks ahead of time, remind them the day before, they're fine with that. It's what you don't want to do is kind of worry about it and then the day before say, oh, can I be away tomorrow? I've got something to do with my schoolwork. To the extent you can, you want to give them a semester schedule, and we're happy to help with any of those communications and such. So that's a really good question.
And then secondarily, kind of on that point, I've heard, CUA hasn't made a word yet on what the fall is going to look like. But I've heard some universities that are just going to go till Thanksgiving and then close after that. What would that look like for our program and internship wise? I know, I mean, like I said, like you said, communication is of the utmost important. And in that circumstance, I think that bridge would be crossed, but any 2 cents on that?
Yeah. That decision hasn't been made. I know it's on the table. We've got, gosh, I think about 12 different committees working on different aspects of what will happen in the fall. And that's one of them, and the timing. And, some schools have already announced that. We're not in a position to yet. I think it would be pretty much the same as this last semester when all of a sudden, boom, spring break comes, don't come back to campus, and the same applied to the internship, because at the same time that we were closing the on-campus experience, most companies were closing. So just as we've learned how to deal with the online environment, companies have to at the same time.
Something to consider in addition to that, Mark, is that internships may look a little different this fall in general than they have in the past. I think there will be more remote opportunities available. So you may already be remote for your internship and just be able to continue doing that regardless of what happens with school. So that's a conversation to continue to have with your employer as well. And we'll obviously keep you updated on what happens at CUA. But if you do need help with any of that communication, any of you, when you are talking to employers, that's what I'm here for. I can help you craft that message or help you approach your supervisor in the best way.
Yeah, when it comes to any decision from Catholic, we're going to be as transparent as possible. So the second that we find out, I'm sure you will all receive an email, but we'll also be communicating what that looks like for us too. So just be on the lookout for that. But we're not going to be holding anything back. We're going to let you know as soon as we know.
Yeah. The good news is Thanksgiving is very late in the month this year. So if they do make that decision, I think I should check the schedule. There's only a couple weeks of classes left. And then as far as exams go, those can be online. A lot of our exams are more project and paper-based. So, that doesn't worry us at all.
Any final questions?
Just out of curiosity, piggybacking off of that last question, for this last semester in this graduating class, how did you guys handle the kind of networking aspects? Because that's a huge aspect of the program. Obviously, that's not happening in person during, this past spring and stuff like that. Not trying to be pessimistic, but just realistic if that kind of stuff does happen again for our program. Just curious, like how you guys did that. Did you have little Zoom happy hours, or what did you guys do?
Yeah, so great question. So we had Zoom happy hours pretty much every other week. We had our Thirsty Thursdays over Zoom. We had our first digital company visit with Capital One. So we had like half-hour segments with different parts of the company. And then we had a marketing panel that was with 3 or 4 people that kind of talked about what they did. So just kind of like with everyone else, when we transitioned to online, everything transitioned to Zoom. So there were a few experiences that students missed out on. So for example, we weren't able to go to the Supreme Court visit because that needed to be in person. So what we're going to do is we're making plans to make sure that your experience, despite anything that might happen, is still going to be as positive as it possibly can be. It might not look exactly the same as it has in years past, but that doesn't mean that what you're going to get out of it isn't just as important or just as relevant to what you want to do.
And we found that companies adapted very well. Companies were coming to us saying, we want to have an info session. We want to have a networking event with your students. So just as we adapted, companies in the area, well, all over the country, obviously adapted just as well.
I can say too, from a larger Bush School perspective for employer relations, that we may actually even be tapping into more companies than we've been able to, given that we have this aspect, this component of connecting with them, and they don't have to always come to campus. So, or we don't always have to go out there. So I actually see networking increasing now that we have, everyone's getting really used to this way of networking. It's really, the way you take advantage of it is all about that follow-up afterwards and using the conversation, the things you learned in that networking session to your advantage in your cover letters and in your communications with employers. So I don't think that will go away at all.
Great. All right, everyone. We'll look for our follow-up email tomorrow. I should be posting this to YouTube, and we'll send you all the link if you want to take a look at it, just go over anything that you might have missed. And then Dan Noon will be leading the session at 4 o'clock on Wednesday. I'll send you a calendar invite for that Wednesday morning or tomorrow as well. So put it on your calendars, and we look forward to seeing you all then.
Thanks, Mary Kate. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.